Let me introduce you to a concept that will immediately explain a type of student or reviewer you have probably already encountered, but never had the right words for. It is called 8th grade syndrome. The name comes from Japanese pop culture. It appeared in anime, manga, and online communities to describe a very specific type of behavior that tends to show up around early adolescence but, and this is the important part, does not always stay there. 8th grade syndrome refers to a pattern where a person develops an exaggerated sense of their own intelligence, uniqueness, or superiority. They believe they see things others cannot see. They think they are more perceptive, more critical, and more intellectually advanced than the people around them. They have a strong need to demonstrate that they are not easily impressed, because being impressed would mean admitting that someone else is good at something, and that threatens the identity they have built around being the smartest or most discerning person in the room. Sound familiar? Because if you have spent any significant time reading 1-star or 4-star reviews with unnecessarily harsh comments on tutoring platforms, you have absolutely met this person. The reason this pattern shows up so visibly in comment sections, especially on Japanese platforms, is connected to the specific combination of anonymity, low social stakes, and the structure of the review system itself. In real life, most people with this tendency have to keep it somewhat under control. Social consequences exist. People push back. The person sitting across from you can see your face and respond in real time. But online, especially in a review box where you are essentially writing a short statement that the other person cannot immediately respond to, that restraint disappears. The review section becomes a stage. And for someone whose entire internal identity is built around being the most perceptive critic in the room, a review section is the perfect performance space. Now, let's talk about why actual 14-year-olds show up in this pattern so often. Adolescence, specifically early to mid-adolescence, is a developmental stage where the brain is going through enormous changes. The part of the brain responsible for regulating emotions, understanding consequences, and seeing other people's perspectives is literally still being built during this period. Teenagers are wired to push boundaries, to establish identity, and to test their own power in social situations. They are also highly sensitive to feeling dismissed, condescended to, or not taken seriously. Put all of that together, and you have a person who is primed to use an anonymous review as a way to feel powerful, seen, and intellectually validated, all at once. A 14-year-old who books an English lesson, feels slightly challenged or slightly bored, and then leaves a 1-star review saying the teacher was unprepared or spoke too fast is not providing genuine feedback. They are performing confidence they are still building. They are using the rating system to feel like an adult critic when they are still a teenager working out who they are. The genuinely interesting and honestly frustrating thing is that this behavior does not reliably disappear with age. And this brings us to the second group that shows up consistently in harsh comment sections: Japanese teachers and professors. This one needs to be discussed carefully because it is not about all teachers or all professors. Many are wonderful, thoughtful, and fair. But there is a specific subset within this professional group that exhibits 8th grade syndrome tendencies in a particularly intense form, and it makes complete sense when you understand their background. Japanese teachers, especially those who work in formal academic settings, operate within a professional culture that places enormous value on expertise, hierarchy, and the authority of the educated. They have spent years, sometimes decades, in environments where their knowledge is the standard that others are measured against. They are accustomed to being the evaluator, not the evaluated. They are used to students adjusting to them, not the other way around. When a person with that professional background books an online English lesson, they often arrive with a completely different frame of mind than a regular student. They are not really there as a learner. They are there as a colleague, or more accurately, as a superior, someone who already knows how things should be done and is watching to see if the tutor meets that standard. When the lesson does not align precisely with their expectations, when the tutor's accent differs from the model accent they teach in their own classes, when the correction style is different from their own, when the conversation takes a direction they did not anticipate, the reaction can be disproportionate. A 4-star review with a comment about pronunciation. A 3-star rating with a note suggesting the tutor work on their material preparation. Written politely, of course, because Japanese professional culture demands surface politeness. But the subtext is unmistakable. This tutor did not meet my standard, and I am noting it publicly. The feedback is less about the lesson and more about the reviewer's need to maintain their identity as the authority in the room, even a room they technically entered as a student. This is classic 8th grade syndrome in its adult professional form. The person has built their entire sense of worth around being the most knowledgeable, the most critical, the most perceptive evaluator. Being genuinely taught by someone else, especially someone younger, someone foreign, someone whose background does not match the credentials they respect, is threatening to that identity. The low or mediocre rating with the picky comment is not an honest assessment of the lesson quality. It is a defense mechanism. It is the adult version of a teenager writing a harsh review to prove they are not easily impressed. What makes this extra frustrating in the context of ESL tutoring is the specific irony of a Japanese English teacher criticizing a native or fluent English speaker's pronunciation or teaching style. Japanese English education has historically been criticized, including by Japanese educators themselves, for producing students who can pass written grammar exams but struggle significantly with actual spoken communication. Many Japanese English teachers were themselves taught by non-native speakers using methods that prioritize reading and grammar over conversation. Their reference point for what correct English sounds like is often based on a very narrow model, usually British received pronunciation or a specific American accent, that does not reflect the actual diversity of English as it is spoken globally. When that teacher books a conversation lesson and encounters a tutor whose English is clear, functional, and natural but does not match their narrow internal model, the discomfort they feel gets redirected into a criticism of the tutor rather than a recognition of their own limited exposure. For foreign tutors dealing with this specific type of reviewer, the most important thing to understand is that the feedback is coming from a place of ego, not expertise. A student who genuinely wants to learn does not arrive ready to evaluate. They arrive ready to receive. A reviewer who uses their comment to demonstrate how much they know, rather than to describe what actually happened in the lesson, is not giving you useful information about your teaching. They are giving you useful information about their own insecurities. That is a completely different thing, and it deserves to be treated as such, meaning you read it, you recognize it for what it is, and you move on without letting it live in your head. The practical response to 8th grade syndrome reviewers, whether they are actual teenagers or adult professionals who never quite grew out of the pattern, is the same in both cases. Do not engage emotionally. Do not rewrite your teaching approach based on the feedback of someone who arrived with the primary goal of finding fault. Do not internalize a criticism that was never really about you. Your job is to teach. Their job, apparently, was to remind everyone that they have opinions. Those are two very different jobs, and only one of them is worth your energy. The review section of any online platform will always attract a percentage of people who use it as a performance space rather than a feedback space. In Japan specifically, where status, hierarchy, and the demonstration of refined judgment are culturally significant, that percentage tends to express itself in ways that are particularly pointed. Knowing the psychology behind it does not make it less annoying, but it does make it smaller. And smaller is manageable. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for Japanese and Korean language learning content, fun ESL class stories, sometimes even the toxic ones, plus videos about pets, plants, and anything interesting I discover in my daily life.